The Church Fathers and the Eternal Decalogue. The timeless code. Could ancient laws, whispered across millennia by the giants of faith, hold the shocking key to unlocking your deepest longings and navigating the chaos of modern life? Prepare to witness a groundbreaking story, the first and only unveiling of the Decalogue's hidden power through the eyes of Augustine, Aquinas, and the early Church. A narrative never heard before. Stay tuned until the very end for a revelation that will leave you speechless. Like, subscribe, comment with your own awakening, and share this uniquely heartwarming story uncovered with everyone you know for more profound journeys of the Spirit, from the dawn of revelation upon the windswept heights of Sinai. A voice, not merely human but resonating with the very breath of the divine, etched a timeless code into the fabric of existence. These were not simply pronouncements of societal order, nor mere prohibitions against transgression. They were, and remain, the very architecture of a life, lived in communion with God and in authentic relationship with our fellow travelers on this earthly pilgrimage. For within the seemingly stark pronouncements of the Decalogue lies a profound invitation. An invitation to participate in the very holiness of God, to reflect His image in the choices we make, and to build a world ordered by love and justice. Consider the quiet scriptoria of monasteries, sanctuaries of contemplation, where the illuminated word was not just copied but prayerfully absorbed. Generation after generation of seekers, wrestling with the divine text, sought to unravel the mysteries held within these 10 concise declarations. They understood that these were not arbitrary rules imposed from without, but rather the unveiling of an inherent moral order woven into the cosmos itself, a reflection of the very nature of the Creator. And then, fast forward to the bustling agora of ancient cities, the nascent stirrings of human civilization, grappling with the complexities of community. Even there, etched into the conscience of humanity, was the echo of these fundamental truths. A primal understanding of right and wrong, of the boundaries necessary for flourishing. And now, in our sprawling modern world, amidst the cacophony of progress and the dizzying speed of change, the stark simplicity of "you shall not" is projected onto the cold steel and glass of our skyscrapers. A persistent, perhaps even unsettling, reminder of the enduring relevance of this ancient wisdom. But how do we truly grasp the depths of this eternal code? How do we move beyond a superficial understanding of do's and don'ts to encounter the transformative power held within? It is here that the giants of our faith, the luminous minds of the Church Fathers, offer us an invaluable inheritance. Augustine, wrestling with the tumultuous currents of his own heart, discovered in these commandments not merely external laws, but signposts pointing towards the deepest longings of the human soul. The restless yearning for truth, for beauty, for ultimate belonging that only God can truly satisfy. Aquinas, with his meticulous intellect and profound theological insight, illuminated the inherent rationality of the Decalogue, demonstrating how these divine precepts are not in conflict with human reason, but rather elevate and perfect it, guiding us towards our ultimate end, which is union with the divine. These were not detached scholars, but passionate seekers who lived and breathed the Scriptures, whose lives became testaments to the enduring power of these divine directives. They saw in the prohibition against idolatry not just the rejection of false gods fashioned from stone or wood, but the subtle and insidious ways in which we can elevate earthly desires, power, wealth, pleasure, to the place that belongs solely to the transcendent. They understood that the command to honor our parents was not simply a matter of filial piety, but a foundational principle of order and respect that extends to all forms of legitimate authority, mirroring the reverence we owe to our ultimate Father. The Church Fathers, through their sermons, their treatises, and their very lives. Unlocked layers of meaning within the Decalogue that continue to resonate today. They taught us that these commandments are not chains that bind us, but rather the very framework for true freedom. The freedom to love authentically, to live justly, and to orient our lives towards the ultimate good. Their insights reveal a code that is both ancient and ever new. A timeless wisdom that speaks with profound clarity to the enduring questions of the human heart. They invite us to move beyond a legalistic interpretation and to encounter the living God who speaks through these sacred words, beckoning us towards a life of profound meaning, purpose, and eternal hope. Heart over habit. For Augustine, this towering intellect and passionate heart, the Decalogue was far more than a set of ancient pronouncements etched in stone. It was a living testament to the deepest yearning of the human spirit, a divinely ordained compass pointing us away from the seductive allure of temporal distractions and towards the singular, enduring object of our true desire, God Himself. He understood, through the crucible of His own tumultuous journey, the profound truth articulated in those immortal words. Cor nostrum inquietum est donec, requiescat in tu. Our hearts are restless until they rest in you. This fundamental restlessness, this innate longing for something more, Augustine recognized as the very engine of our spiritual quest, a God-shaped void that only God can truly fill. The 10 Commandments, in this light, cease to be mere prohibitions, external constraints imposed upon our freedom. Instead, they become a mirror held up to the often shadowed recesses of our souls, revealing the disordered affections that pull us away from our ultimate good. They expose the subtle idolatries we commit, not necessarily in bowing before graven images, but in the insidious ways we elevate the created over the Creator, the fleeting satisfaction of material possessions, the ephemeral praise of human approval, the intoxicating but ultimately empty promises of worldly power. These become the false gods that hold our hearts captive, preventing us from experiencing the liberating embrace of divine love. Augustine, with the wisdom born of both profound sin and profound grace, saw the commandments as a divine pedagogy, a loving instruction designed to reorient our affections. They are not meant to crush our desires, but to purify and direct them towards their proper object. Commandment against coveting, for instance, is not simply a prohibition against wanting what belongs to another. It delves into the very root of envy and the insatiable hunger for more that leaves us perpetually dissatisfied, It calls us to cultivate a spirit of gratitude for the gifts we have been given and to find our true treasure in the inexhaustible riches of God's love. And from this profound understanding emerges Augustine's seemingly paradoxical yet deeply insightful maxim: Dilige et quod vis fac, love, and do what you will. This is not a license for libertinism, a dismissal of moral boundaries. Rather, it speaks to a heart so thoroughly transformed by divine charity, so utterly aligned with the will of God, that its very desires become a reflection of that love. When the heart is truly centered on God, when our deepest affections are ordered towards Him, then our actions will naturally flow from that wellspring of love, fulfilling the spirit, if not always the strict letter, of the law. The strict letter of the law. Imagine a tree deeply rooted in fertile soil, bathed in sunlight. Its branches will naturally reach towards the light. Its leaves will flourish, and its fruit will be abundant. Similarly, a soul deeply rooted in the love of God will naturally bear the fruit of righteousness, its actions flowing from an inner disposition of charity, justice, and compassion. The commandments, then, become not external shackles, but the supportive trellis that allows the vine of our love to grow and bear fruit in abundance. Augustine's own life stands as a powerful testament to this transformative power. He experienced firsthand the chains of disordered desire, the agonizing pull of habit, and the seductive whispers of the world. But through his encounter with the living God, through the grace that pierced his hardened heart, his loves were reordered. He came to understand that true freedom is not found in the unbridled pursuit of fleeting pleasures, but in the joyful surrender to the one who alone can satisfy the deepest longings of the human heart. The Decalogue for Augustine became a roadmap on this journey of transformation, a guide leading us from the darkness of self-absorption into the radiant light of divine love. It is an invitation to move beyond a mere adherence to rules and to cultivate a heart that beats in rhythm with the very heart of God, a heart that loves because it has first been loved, and in loving fulfills the deepest meaning of the law, the inward turn. Augustine, a keen observer of the human heart and a profound interpreter of the divine word, recognized in Christ's radical pronouncements a pivotal shift in our understanding of the moral life. When Jesus declared, "Anyone who looks lustfully at a woman has already committed adultery with her in his heart," he wasn't merely reiterating an external prohibition. He was delving into the very wellspring of human action, the inner landscape of desire that gives birth to outward deeds. Augustine, reflecting deeply on this unsettling truth, understood that the sixth commandment, "You shall not commit adultery," extends far beyond the physical act itself. It penetrates the realm of intention, the secret stirrings of the heart, the nascent desires that, if unchecked, can poison our relationships and fracture the sacred bond of communion. For Augustine, the Decalogue was not simply a code of conduct to be outwardly observed. It was an invitation to an inward transformation, a call to purify the very desires that shape our thoughts and ultimately dictate our actions. He saw the human heart as a battleground, a constant tension between the pull of our fallen nature, which breeds the self-seeking and often destructive force of lust, and the beckoning call of divine grace, which cultivates the selfless and unifying power of love. In his seminal work, The Spirit and the Letter, Augustine articulated this fundamental dichotomy with stark clarity. The law prescribes nothing but love, and nature breeds nothing but lust. This isn't a condemnation of our inherent human nature in its entirety, but rather a recognition of the woundedness inflicted upon it by sin, a wound that inclines us towards self-gratification at the expense of genuine connection and selfless love. Consider the scene unfolding in the Gospel. The woman caught in adultery is brought before Jesus, the weight of her transgression palpable. The law, in its strict interpretation, demands her stoning. Yet, Jesus' response is not a dismissal of the law, but a radical reinterpretation of its true intent. He challenges the accusers to look inward, to confront the potential for similar desires lurking within their own hearts. His words written in the dust, a gesture laden with symbolic meaning, perhaps representing the ephemeral nature of earthly judgment or the divine act of creation and forgiveness. Deflect the outward accusation and forgiveness. Deflect the outward accusation and redirect the focus towards the inner life. He exposes the hypocrisy of judging external actions while remaining blind to the internal inclinations that can be equally destructive. Juxtapose this with the sterile efficiency of a modern courtroom. Justice is often perceived as the impartial application of laws to outward actions based on demonstrable evidence. While necessary for societal order, this system can sometimes overlook the complexities of human motivation, the inner turmoil that precedes and often fuels outward transgression. Augustine's insight reminds us that true justice, the justice that resonates with the divine heart, must also address the root causes of our actions, the desires that shape our intentions. The sixth commandment, therefore, becomes a profound call to cultivate purity of heart. It challenges us to examine the way we look at others, the thoughts we entertain, the desires we nurture in the secret chambers of our minds. Lust, in Augustine's understanding, is not merely about physical attraction. It is a selfish desire that seeks to possess and exploit the other, reducing them to an object of gratification rather than recognizing their inherent dignity as a fellow child of God. It is a desire that fractures communion, creating walls of separation and objectification where there should be mutual respect and selfless love. Augustine's own struggles with lust in his youth lend a powerful authenticity to his teachings. He knew firsthand the seductive power of disordered desires and the internal battles waged in the pursuit of virtue. His conversion was not simply an intellectual assent to theological truths. It was a profound transformation of his heart, a reorientation of his deepest affections towards God. This personal experience informed his understanding of the commandments, revealing them not as abstract rules, but as vital pathways to inner healing and spiritual liberation. The inward turn that Augustine advocates is not an exercise in morbid introspection or self-flagellation. Rather, it is an invitation to a deeper self-awareness, a courageous examination of our inner landscape. In the light of God's love, it is about recognizing the subtle ways in which our desires can become twisted and self-serving, and then, through the grace of God and the discipline of virtuous living, reordering them towards the good of others and the glory of God, This understanding of the sixth commandment has profound implications for how we relate to one another. It calls us to move beyond a superficial avoidance of outward transgression and to cultivate a deep respect for the inherent dignity of every human being. It challenges us to see others not as objects of our desires, but as brothers and sisters in Christ, deserving of our selfless love and respect. Ultimately, Augustine's interpretation of the sixth commandment, rooted in Christ's own radical teaching, invites us to a more profound understanding of the moral life. It is not enough to simply refrain from outward acts of transgression. We are called to cultivate a heart so filled with love for God and neighbor that the very desire to harm or exploit is extinguished at its source. This inward transformation, this purification of our desires, is the true path to fulfilling the law of love, the very essence of the Decalogue as understood through the heart and mind of St. Augustine. It is a challenging call, but one that promises the profound joy and liberation that comes from a heart fully surrendered to the love of God. The rational blueprint. Enter Thomas Aquinas, the angelic doctor, whose intellectual edifice sought to harmonize the wisdom of the ancients with the revealed truths of Scripture. For Aquinas, the Decalogue was not merely a set of commandments handed down from on high, arbitrary decrees, demanding blind obedience. Rather, he saw them as deeply rooted in the very fabric of creation, the primary precepts of natural law, principles discernible by human reason itself. These were not simply rules imposed from without, but rather the articulation of an inherent moral order woven into the tapestry of existence, a blueprint for human flourishing discoverable by any rational mind willing to engage in honest inquiry. Consider the profound implications of this understanding. When the divine voice thundered, "You shall not murder," it was not introducing a novel concept into the human experience. Aquinas argued that even without explicit revelation, the inherent value of human life, the intrinsic dignity of the imago Dei, the image of God imprinted upon every person, is accessible to human reason. The natural inclination towards self-preservation, the intuitive understanding of the wrongness of gratuitous violence, These are not merely learned behaviors, but fundamental insights arising from our rational capacity to grasp the inherent goodness of being and the inviolability of human existence. Aquinas, in his meticulous and systematic way, demonstrated how the precepts of the Decalogue align with the fundamental inclinations of human nature. We are naturally inclined towards self-preservation, towards procreation and the education of offspring, towards living in society and knowing the truth about God. The commandments, far from stifling these inclinations, guide and direct them towards their proper ends, ensuring that they are pursued in a way that respects the inherent dignity of all. The prohibition against murder, therefore, safeguards our fundamental inclination to exist and recognizes the sanctity of the life that reflects the divine. This concept of natural law, as articulated by Aquinas, offers a powerful bridge between faith and reason, between believers and non-believers. He posited that the light of reason is divine, a spark of the divine intellect present within every human being, enabling us to discern fundamental moral truths. Even those who do not accept the authority of divine revelation can, through the diligent exercise of their reason, arrive at a similar understanding of the core principles enshrined in the Decalogue: the inherent wrongness of theft, the importance of fidelity, the necessity of truthfulness. These are not simply religious tenets, but principles that underpin any just and flourishing society, discoverable through reasoned reflection on human nature and the requirements of communal life. Imagine the philosopher gazing at the stars, not just in awe of their celestial beauty, but seeking to understand the underlying laws that govern their movement, the rational order that sustains the cosmos. Similarly, Aquinas believed that there is a rational order embedded within the moral universe, a natural law that can be discerned through careful observation of human nature and its inherent inclinations. The Decalogue, in this context, is not an arbitrary imposition, but a clear and concise articulation of these fundamental moral principles, a divine confirmation of what human reason, when properly employed, can already grasp. The genius of Aquinas lies in his ability to synthesize faith and reason, to show that they are not opposing forces, but rather two wings on which the human spirit can ascend to truth. He understood that while human reason has its limitations and can be clouded by passion and prejudice, it is nonetheless a powerful tool for understanding the world and our place within it. The Decalogue, as a manifestation of divine wisdom, illuminates and perfects the insights of natural law, providing a clear and authoritative guide for human conduct. Consider the commandment to honor one's father and mother. Aquinas saw this not just as a matter of filial piety, but as a foundational principle of social order. The family is the primary unit of society, and the respect and care owed to parents, who nurtured and educated us, forms the basis for broader social cohesion and respect for authority. This principle, while divinely commanded, also resonates with our natural inclination towards gratitude and the recognition of the debt we owe to those who came before us. Aquinas' understanding of the Decalogue is rooted in natural law, provides a powerful framework for ethical discourse that transcends religious boundaries. It suggests that there are objective moral truths, accessible to all, that form the foundation for a just and humane society. While faith provides a deeper understanding of these truths and motivates us towards their consistent application through the grace of God, the underlying principles themselves are not solely dependent on religious belief. In essence, Aquinas reveals the Decalogue as a rational blueprint for human flourishing, a divine wisdom that resonates with the deepest inclinations of our nature and the inherent capacities of our reason. It is an invitation to live in accordance with the truth of who we are, created in the image and likeness of God, and to build a world ordered by justice, love, and respect for the inherent dignity of every human person. This understanding offers a compelling vision of a moral order that is both divinely ordained and rationally accessible, a testament to the harmonious interplay between faith and reason in the pursuit of truth and the good life, virtue and commandment. Aquinas, the meticulous architect of theological thought, saw the Decalogue not as a static list of prohibitions, but as a dynamic pedagogy, a divinely ordained curriculum designed to cultivate virtue within the human soul. He astutely recognized the intrinsic connection between the commandments and the cardinal virtues, those fundamental dispositions of the will and intellect that enable us to live well and flourish as human beings. For Aquinas, the commandments were not merely external constraints, but rather signposts guiding us towards the interior cultivation of these essential virtues, shaping our character and orienting us towards our ultimate end. Consider the commandment, "You shall not steal." Aquinas understood this not simply as a prohibition against the unlawful acquisition of another's property, but as a fundamental principle underpinning the virtue of justice. Justice, in its essence, is the unwavering will to render to each person what is due to them. The commandment against stealing, therefore, serves as a crucial boundary, protecting the right of individuals to their possessions and fostering a social order built on fairness and respect for the goods of others. By consistently adhering to this command, individuals gradually cultivate the habit of respecting the rights of others, thereby nurturing the virtue of justice within their hearts. This virtue then extends beyond mere abstention from theft, inclining us towards honesty in our dealings, fairness in our exchanges, and a commitment to upholding the rights and dignity of all members of society. Similarly, Aquinas saw the commandment to honor your father and your mother as deeply connected to the virtue of piety. Piety, in its classical sense, encompasses not only reverence for parents, but also a broader sense of duty and respect towards legitimate authority, one's country, and ultimately towards God as the ultimate source of all being. Honoring our parents, those who have nurtured and cared for us, lays the foundation for this wider sense of reverence and respect. It cultivates within us a disposition of gratitude, a recognition of the debt we owe to those who have contributed to our formation and well-being. This virtue of piety, nurtured within the familial context, then extends outwards, shaping our relationship with the broader community and our understanding of our place within the created order, ultimately leading us towards a deeper reverence for the divine. Aquinas, drawing upon the wisdom of both Scripture and the classical philosophical tradition, viewed the Decalogue as a kind of schoolmaster, echoing the words of St. Paul in his letter to the Galatians. Just as a tutor guides a child towards maturity and understanding, so too do the commandments guide our souls, initially through external directives, towards the inner freedom that comes from virtuous living. The commandments provide a clear framework for moral behavior, establishing boundaries and highlighting actions that are intrinsically harmful to ourselves and others. By consistently striving to adhere to these precepts, we gradually develop virtuous habits, internalizing the moral principles they embody. This process of habituation is crucial in Aquinas' understanding of moral development. Virtues are not simply innate qualities, but rather dispositions of character acquired through repeated action. Just as practicing a musical instrument develops skill, consistently acting in accordance with the commandments cultivates virtue within the soul. The commandments provide the initial guidance, the external framework, but the ultimate goal is the interior transformation of the individual, the development of virtuous habits that make good actions flow naturally and joyfully. Consider the image of the medieval tapestry, each thread contributing to a larger, coherent picture of the virtues. The commandments, in this analogy, are like the foundational threads, providing the essential structure upon which the intricate tapestry of a virtuous life is woven. Each commandment corresponds to and cultivates a particular aspect of virtue, contributing to the overall harmony and beauty of a well-ordered soul. The modern classroom scene further illuminates this concept. The teacher, patiently explaining justice to the students, is engaged in a similar work of moral formation. By articulating the principles of fairness, rights, and responsibilities, the teacher is not just imparting information, but also shaping the students' understanding of how to live justly within their community. The commandment, "You shall not steal," becomes more than just a rule. It becomes a concrete expression of the virtue of justice, a principle that fosters harmonious relationships and protects the well-being of all. For Aquinas, the ultimate aim of this moral training, guided by the Decalogue, is the freedom of grace. This is not a license to do whatever we please, but rather the liberation that comes from a heart transformed by virtue and infused with divine grace. A divine grace, when our desires and actions are aligned with the good, when we have cultivated the virtues that enable us to love God and neighbor effectively, then we experience a profound inner freedom, a liberation from the tyranny of disordered passions and the enslavement of sin. The commandments, therefore, are not impediments to freedom, but rather the very pathways that lead us towards it. In essence, Aquinas reveals the Decalogue as a vital instrument in the cultivation of virtue, a divine pedagogy that trains our souls for the freedom of grace. The commandments are intrinsically linked to the cardinal virtues guiding us towards justice, prudence, fortitude, and temperance, as well as the theological virtues of faith, hope, and charity. By understanding this profound connection, we move beyond a mere legalistic adherence to the commandments and embrace them as essential tools for our moral and spiritual growth, recognizing their crucial role in shaping us into the persons God intends us to be. Individuals who not only refrain from evil but actively pursue the good with love and wisdom. This perspective offers a compelling vision of the moral life as a journey of ongoing formation, guided by divine wisdom and leading towards the fullness of human flourishing in communion with God. Origin, the spiritual sense. As the early church wrestled with the profound implications of the Sinai revelation, a brilliant and often controversial mind emerged in the East. Origen of Alexandria, a scholar of immense erudition and a spiritual seeker of fervent intensity. Origen approached the scriptures, including the Decalogue, with a conviction that their meaning extended far beyond the literal and historical. He saw within the sacred texts a rich tapestry of allegory, layers upon layers of divine mystery, waiting to be unveiled by the discerning soul. For Origen, the commandments were not simply moral prescriptions for a particular people in a specific time. They were imbued with a deeper spiritual significance, pointing towards the eternal realities of the soul's journey towards God. Consider the narrative of the Exodus and the promise of the Promised Land. While acknowledging its historical reality as the liberation of the Israelites from Egyptian bondage and their entry into Canaan, Origen perceived a far more profound allegorical meaning. This promised land, he taught, was not merely a geographical location flowing with milk and honey, but the ultimate destination of the human spirit, the intimate and transformative union of the soul with God. The journey through the wilderness, with its trials and temptations, became an allegory for the soul's arduous ascent towards spiritual maturity, a process fraught with challenges that mirror the internal struggles we face in adhering to the divine law. In this allegorical light, the Ten Commandments themselves take on a richer, more profound dimension. The seemingly straightforward prohibition, "You shall not covet," transcends the mere abstention from desiring a neighbor's possessions. For Origen, this commandment became a powerful call to detach ourselves from the insidious allure of material snares the worldly attachments that can bind our hearts and distract us from our ultimate pursuit of the divine. Covetousness, in its deeper spiritual sense, is not just about wanting what others have. It is about an inordinate attachment to earthly things, a misplaced desire that prioritizes temporal possessions over the eternal riches of God's love and grace. Origen saw this commandment as a crucial step on the path to spiritual liberation, a necessary detachment from the fleeting and ultimately unsatisfying nature of material wealth and worldly acclaim. This theme of detachment resonated deeply with the burgeoning monastic movement of his time, where individuals sought to live lives of radical simplicity and self-denial in their pursuit of God. The monastic vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience can be seen, in part as a practical and rigorous embodiment of this deeper understanding of the commandment against covetousness, a deliberate stripping away of worldly attachments to create space for the soul's encounter with the divine. Origen's allegorical interpretation extended to other commandments as well. The prohibition against idolatry, for instance, is not limited to the worship of physical idols. It encompassed any misplaced devotion, any earthly pursuit or desire that takes the place of God in our hearts. The commandment to keep the Sabbath holy became not just a day of rest, but an allegory for the soul's ultimate rest in God, a cessation from the restless striving of worldly pursuits, and a turning towards contemplative union with the divine. This allegorical approach, while sometimes leading to interpretations that were later debated within the Church, offered a powerful lens through which to understand the enduring relevance and spiritual depth of the Decalogue. It moved the commandments beyond the realm of mere external rules and placed them squarely within the context of the individual's spiritual journey. They became not just laws to be obeyed, but signposts on the path to holiness, revealing the inner dispositions and attachments that hinder or facilitate our union with God. Origen's work encouraged believers to look beyond the surface meaning of the Scriptures and to seek the deeper spiritual truths contained within. He believed that the divine word was multifaceted, offering different levels of understanding to those who approached it with humility and a desire for spiritual growth. The literal sense provided the historical and moral foundation, but the allegorical, tropological, moral, and anagogical, eschatological senses offered richer insights into the mysteries of faith and the ultimate destiny of the human soul. The image of the desert hermit praying in the cave beautifully illustrates this Origenian understanding. The stark simplicity of the hermit's surroundings reflects a deliberate detachment from worldly comforts and distractions, a physical manifestation of the spiritual detachment called for by the commandment against covetousness in its deeper sense. The hermit's solitary prayer signifies a turning inward, a focus on the soul's relationship with God, the ultimate promised land of spiritual fulfillment. Origen's legacy lies in his profound emphasis on the spiritual depth of Scripture and his understanding of the moral life as an interior journey of transformation. He invited believers to engage with the Decalogue not merely as a legal code, but as a guide for the soul's ascent to God, a call to purify our desires, detach from worldly attachments, and seek our ultimate fulfillment in union with the divine. His allegorical approach, while requiring careful discernment, opened up new vistas of spiritual understanding and continues to inspire those who seek a deeper engagement with the timeless wisdom of the Ten Commandments. For Origen, these ancient pronouncements were not relics of the past, but living words that speak to the eternal longings of the human heart and illuminate the path towards our ultimate destiny in God. Chrysostom, Justice in the City, in the vibrant heart of the Byzantine Empire. Amidst the opulence and the stark realities of urban life, there arose a voice of unparalleled eloquence and unwavering conviction. John Chrysostom, the golden-mouthed preacher. Unlike Origen's focus on the allegorical depths of Scripture and the solitary pursuit of spiritual detachment, Chrysostom brought the penetrating light of the gospel to bear on the concrete realities of society, particularly the plight of the poor and the demands of justice within the city walls. His understanding of the Decalogue was not confined to the inner life of the individual. He saw its precepts as having profound and direct implications for how believers were to live in community and engage with the inequalities of the world around them. With the fiery zeal of a prophet, Chrysostom thundered from the pulpit, his words cutting through the complacency and self-interest that often characterize the powerful and the wealthy. His interpretation of the commandments was strikingly practical and socially conscious. He famously declared, "Not to share our wealth with the poor is to steal from them and to take away their livelihood. The riches we possess are not our own, but belong also to those who are in need." In this powerful statement, Chrysostom directly applied the principles underlying the 8th commandment, "You shall not steal," to the social and economic disparities of his time. He argued that the accumulation of excessive wealth while others languished in poverty was not merely a lack of charity, but a fundamental violation of justice, a silent theft from those whose very survival depended on the generosity of others. Chrysostom's sermons were not abstract theological treatises. They were passionate calls to action, urging his listeners to bridge the chasm between their professed piety and their practical engagement with the suffering of their neighbors. He saw a dangerous disconnect between outward religious observance and the lack of genuine compassion and social responsibility. For Chrysostom, true faith was not confined to the rituals of the church. It was to be lived out in the streets, in the marketplace, in the very fabric of daily life, particularly in the way believers treated the most vulnerable members of society. His profound understanding of Christian charity was not sentimental or condescending. It was rooted in a deep theological conviction about the inherent dignity of every human being, created in the image and likeness of God. He saw Christ himself in the faces of the poor and the marginalized, echoing Jesus' own words about the judgment based on how we treat the least of these. For Chrysostom, neglecting the needs of the poor was not just a social failing. It was a direct affront to Christ himself, famously proclaimed, "The altar is not for gold, but for the hungry." This powerful metaphor challenged the prevailing tendency to adorn churches with lavish wealth while neglecting the basic needs of the poor within the community. Chrysostom's point was clear. The true worship of God is not found in material splendor, but in acts of love and compassion towards our neighbor, especially those who are suffering. The Eucharist, the very body and blood of Christ, calls us to a radical solidarity with the broken body of humanity. To partake in the divine banquet while ignoring the hunger of the poor was, for Chrysostom, a profound contradiction, a betrayal of the very essence of Christian faith. Chrysostom's social conscience extended beyond mere almsgiving. He challenged the systemic injustices that perpetuated poverty and inequality. He spoke out against the exploitation of the weak, the corruption of officials, and the indifference of the wealthy. His sermons often targeted the powerful elites of Byzantine society, holding them accountable for their actions and urging them to use their wealth and influence to create a more just and equitable society. His life itself was a testament to his convictions. Despite his prominent position as Archbishop of Constantinople, Chrysostom lived a life of relative simplicity and tirelessly advocated for the poor and the oppressed. He established charitable institutions, including hospitals and soup kitchens, demonstrating in concrete ways the practical implications of his teachings. His unwavering commitment to justice and his fearless denunciation of injustice ultimately led to his exile and eventual death. a powerful reminder of the cost of speaking truth to power. Chrysostom's legacy lies in his powerful fusion of piety and social justice. He reminds us that our love for God cannot be separated from our love for our neighbor, especially those in need. His interpretation of the Decalogue, particularly the Eighth Commandment, challenges us to examine our own attitudes towards wealth and poverty, and to consider the ethical implications of our economic choices. His words continue to resonate across the centuries, urging believers and non-believers alike to recognize the moral imperative to work towards a more just and compassionate world. The image of the bustling Byzantine market reminds us of the complexities of urban life, the constant interplay of commerce and human interaction. Within this context, Chrysostom's voice rises as a powerful call to ethical engagement, urging us to see beyond the pursuit of individual gain and to recognize our shared responsibility for the well-being of the entire community. His preaching, echoing through the grand churches, serves as a reminder that faith must inform our public life and challenge the structures of injustice. And the simple act of serving the poor in the soup kitchens embodies the practical outworking of his theology, a tangible expression of love and solidarity with those on the margins. John Chrysostom, the golden-mouthed, challenges us to move beyond a purely individualistic understanding of the Decalogue and to embrace its profound social implications. It calls us to a faith that is not confined to private devotion, but is actively engaged in the pursuit of justice. A faith that recognizes the inherent dignity of every human being and compels us to share our resources and work towards a world where the hungry are fed, the naked are clothed, and the marginalized are welcomed. His life and teachings serve as a timeless reminder that true piety is inseparable from a commitment to social justice, and that the love of God must necessarily manifest itself in a tangible love for our neighbor. The Reformation's lens. Centuries after the Church, fathers laid their foundational interpretations. A seismic shift known as the Reformation swept through Western Christianity. Figures like Martin Luther and John Calvin, deeply indebted to the patristic tradition yet driven by a profound rediscovery of the primacy of grace, re-examined the Decalogue with fresh urgency. But did their rediscovery truly liberate? Or did it inadvertently create new anxieties about law and salvation? Did their emphasis on sola gratia, grace alone, diminish the enduring importance of these divine commands? And for us, living in a world increasingly skeptical of authority, what relevance can these ancient pronouncements possibly hold when even the concept of objective truth is questioned? Luther, grappling with the weight of his own sinfulness and the perceived legalism of the medieval church, articulated a powerful doctrine of Christian freedom. But did this freedom mean liberation from the law or a new understanding of its purpose? Shockingly, Luther argued that the law, including the Decalogue, served a crucial threefold purpose for the believer: to curb the outward expression of sin in society, acting as a necessary restraint on human depravity, to serve as a mirror, reflecting the depth of our sinfulness and our utter inability to achieve righteousness through our own efforts, and finally, to guide the regenerate Christian, now justified by grace through faith, towards a life of good works as a fruit of that saving grace. But if we are truly saved by grace alone, why this persistent need for a guide? Does this suggest a lingering doubt about the transformative power of grace itself? Or does it point to the ongoing struggle of the human heart? Even after conversion, Calvin, with his systematic and rigorous mind, approached the Decalogue not as a means of earning salvation, a notion vehemently rejected by the Reformers, but as the rule of gratitude. But is gratitude truly a sufficient motivation for obedience in a world where self-interest often reigns supreme? Can a mere sense of thankfulness consistently compel us to adhere to these demanding precepts? Calvin saw the commandments as the believer's appropriate response to the unmerited grace of God, a way of living out one's covenant relationship with the divine. Yet, if our salvation is entirely God's doing, doesn't this reduce the commandments to mere suggestions? Beautiful ideals, perhaps, but ultimately optional in the face of God's overwhelming love. Could this perspective inadvertently lead to a moral relativism, where personal interpretation trumps divine instruction? The Reformation's emphasis on the individual's direct relationship with Scripture undeniably empowered believers. But did it also inadvertently pave the way for a fragmentation of moral understanding, where each person becomes their own ultimate arbiter of right and wrong, in a world saturated with competing voices and moral frameworks? How do we discern the true echo of Sinai amidst the cacophony? Can a purely individualistic interpretation of the Decalogue truly foster the communal justice and love that both the Old and New Testaments demand? Consider the modern Protestant Church, often characterized by its emphasis on personal faith and the direct study of Scripture. While these are undoubtedly valuable, have we perhaps lost a sense of the communal wisdom and the accumulated insights of the centuries, including the profound reflections of the Church Fathers? In our zeal to return to the original sources, have we inadvertently discarded valuable lenses through which to understand the enduring relevance of the Decalogue for our complex modern lives? The Reformation undeniably shifted the theological landscape, emphasizing the primacy of grace and the centrality of Scripture. But it also left us with enduring questions about the precise role and function of the law in the life of the believer and in society as a whole. In a world grappling with moral ambiguity and a rejection of traditional authority, can the Decalogue, viewed through the lens of the Reformation, still offer a compelling and universally accessible framework for ethical living? Or do we need to revisit the insights of the early church, alongside the crucial contributions of the reformers, to truly grasp the enduring power and relevance of this ancient code for our modern spiritual and moral dilemmas? The echoes of Sinai continue to resonate. But are we truly listening with open hearts and discerning minds? Renewing the covenant. Centuries after the Reformation's seismic shifts, the Second Vatican Council sought to open the windows of the Church, engaging the modern world with a renewed sense of purpose and a deeper appreciation for the enduring truths of the faith. But in an age of unprecedented scientific advancement and increasing secularization, could the ancient echoes of Sinai still resonate? Could a code etched in stone millennia ago offer guidance in a world grappling with bioethics, artificial intelligence, and a looming climate crisis? Was the Decalogue destined to become a relic of the past? Or could it be rediscovered as a living covenant for a new era? Vatican II, in its dogmatic constitution on divine revelation, Doi Verbum, S16, boldly reaffirmed the Decalogue's enduring significance, declaring it the purest expression of natural law. But in a world where the very concept of a universal natural law is often dismissed as outdated or culturally relative, what does this assertion truly mean? Can we still speak of inherent moral truths accessible to all regardless of their religious beliefs or cultural background? Or is morality simply a matter of personal opinion or societal consensus, as fluid and ever changing as the latest scientific discovery or political trend, drawing deeply from the wellspring of Aquinas' wisdom? The Church today seeks to apply the enduring principles of natural law, illuminated by the Decalogue, to the complex ethical dilemmas of our time. Consider the breathtaking advancements in bioethics, the power to manipulate the very building blocks of life through technologies like CRISPR, Does "you shall not murder," a command understood by Aquinas as safeguarding the inherent dignity of the imago Dei, have anything to say about the moral permissibility of genetic engineering or the ethical considerations surrounding the beginning and end of life? In an age where we can alter the very blueprint of humanity, are there still inviolable boundaries rooted in our shared human nature? Boundaries that the Decalogue helps us to discern? Or are we now free to redefine life and death according to our own technological capabilities and desires? Similarly, consider the urgent crisis of environmental degradation. Does the command to have dominion over creation? Genesis 1:28, a concept often interpreted through the lens of stewardship by thinkers like Aquinas. Grant us a license to exploit the earth's resources without regard for future generations or the intrinsic value of the natural world? Does the underlying principle of justice, so central to the Decalogue, extend beyond our relationships with other humans to encompass our responsibility towards the planet that sustains us in an age of climate change and ecological collapse? Are we finally awakening to the shocking realization that our disregard for the created order is not just an environmental issue, but a profound moral and spiritual failing? Scenes of interfaith dialogue offer a glimmer of hope. Could the Decalogue and its fundamental moral precepts serve as a common ground for ethical understanding and cooperation among diverse religious traditions? Despite differing theological frameworks, do we share a core set of moral intuitions about the sanctity of life, the importance of truthfulness, the necessity of justice, and the value of family? If so, can the Decalogue, as a purest expression of natural law, provide a shared ethical vocabulary for addressing the global challenges that confront humanity? Or are our differences so profound that even these foundational principles are subject to irreconcilable interpretations? The vibrant eco-justice rallies, bringing together people of diverse backgrounds united by a common concern for the planet, suggest a growing awareness of our interconnectedness and our responsibility towards something larger than ourselves. Could this be a modern manifestation of the natural law principles embedded within the Decalogue? A visceral understanding that we are stewards of creation, not its absolute owners, and that our actions have profound consequences for the well-being of all? Is this a sign that the ancient wisdom of Sinai can indeed speak to the urgent needs of our time, inspiring a renewed sense of ethical responsibility towards the environment? Vatican. His reaffirmation of the Decalogue's significance was not a nostalgic clinging to the past, but a recognition of its enduring power to illuminate the path towards a just and humane future. It calls us to engage with these ancient commands, not as outdated relics, but as timeless principles that speak to the deepest longings of the human heart and the fundamental requirements of human flourishing. In an age of unprecedented change and complexity, the Decalogue, viewed through the lens of reason and faith, continues to offer a vital framework for ethical discernment, guiding us through the moral minefields of our time and reminding us of the enduring truths that underpin a life lived in harmony with God, with one another, and with the created world. The Covenant of Sinai, renewed and reinterpreted in the light of the Gospel and the wisdom of the ages, remains a powerful and relevant guide for navigating the challenges and opportunities of the 21st century. Are we ready to listen to its enduring echoes? The commandments in the digital age. Has the digital revolution, with its boundless connectivity and unprecedented access to information, rendered the ancient pronouncements of the Decalogue obsolete? In a world mediated by screens, algorithms, and the ephemeral nature of online interactions, do these age-old commands still hold sway, or have we unwittingly entered a new moral frontier, where the wisdom of Sinai offers no compass, where the very nature of temptation and transgression has been fundamentally transformed? Could it be that the digital realm, far from being a neutral space, actually amplifies our deepest vices and creates entirely new avenues for violating these timeless truths? Augustine's profound warnings against concupiscence, that restless craving, that insatiable desire for what we do not possess, find a terrifyingly relevant echo in our algorithm-driven world. Isn't the very architecture of social media designed to cultivate this envious longing? Aren't we constantly bombarded with carefully curated images of idealized lives, triggering a perpetual cycle of comparison and dissatisfaction? Has the commandment "do not covet" simply been rewired for the digital age, morphing into an endless scroll of digital desires, a relentless pursuit of online validation and material possessions, subtly advertised through targeted ads? Are we becoming a society perpetually consumed by what we don't have, our hearts tethered to the fleeting approval of likes and followers? Consider the vast landscape of data exploitation. In a world where our every click, every search, every online interaction is tracked, analyzed, and commodified, are we not, in a sense, having our very digital possessions, our personal information, our browsing habits, our intellectual property, subtly pilfered and used for purposes we may not even comprehend? Does the commandment against stealing extend to the intangible realm of data, challenging the ethical implications of surveillance capitalism and the often opaque practices of tech giants? Are we allowing ourselves to be digitally stripped bare, our privacy eroded in the name of convenience and connection? And what of the commandment, "Do not bear false witness," in this era of deepfakes and rampant misinformation, when reality itself can be digitally manipulated with alarming ease, when truth becomes increasingly elusive in the swirling currents of online narratives? How do we even begin to discern what is real and what is fabricated? Has the digital age ushered in an unprecedented era of deception, where reputations can be destroyed with a few lines of code, and the very foundations of trust are eroded by a constant barrage of disinformation? Are we becoming a society drowning in a sea of digital lies, our ability to discern truth from falsehood dangerously compromised? The Church Fathers, though living in a vastly different world, offer a startlingly relevant perspective. Their insistence that the Decalogue speaks to the inner dispositions of the heart, not just outward actions, provides a crucial lens for navigating the ethical complexities of the digital age. They remind us that the intent behind our online interactions, the desires that fuel our digital consumption, and the impact of our virtual presence on others are all subject to the same moral scrutiny as our physical actions. The anonymity offered by the internet does not absolve us of moral responsibility. Rather, it can often amplify our darker impulses, allowing us to engage in behaviors online that we would never consider in face-to-face interactions. The image of the AI Ethics Board highlights the urgent need for moral frameworks in this rapidly evolving technological landscape. But can algorithms truly be programmed with ethical values? Can artificial intelligence be imbued with a sense of justice, compassion, and respect for human dignity? Or are we in danger of creating a future where ethical decisions are outsourced to machines, potentially reflecting the biases and limitations of their creators? Does the Decalogue, with its emphasis on the inherent value of human life and the importance of just relationships, offer essential principles for guiding the development and deployment of artificial intelligence? The encrypted activists in the dimly lit room remind us of the power of digital tools for both good and ill. While technology can be a powerful force for social change and the pursuit of justice, it can also be used to organize harmful activities, spread extremist ideologies, and evade accountability. Does the Decalogue offer any guidance in navigating the ethical ambiguities of online activism and the use of encrypted communication? How do we balance the need for privacy and freedom of expression with the responsibility to prevent harm and promote the common good in the digital realm? The Fathers, in their wisdom, remind us that the Decalogue is not a static relic of a bygone era, but a living word that speaks to the fundamental nature of the human heart and our relationship with God and neighbor. It is a timeless lens through which we can discern the ethical implications of even the most ephemeral digital interactions. The challenge for us in the digital age is to cultivate the same kind of inner vigilance and moral discernment that Augustine and the other fathers urged upon their own communities. We must learn to recognize the new forms that old temptations take in the digital realm and to apply the enduring principles of the Decalogue to the unique challenges and opportunities of our hyper-connected world. The call to communion, to authentic relationship with God and one another, remains as vital in the digital age as it was on the dusty plains of Sinai. But are we willing to use this ancient wisdom to navigate the uncharted territories of our digital future? The mystical summit, were the commandments ever intended to be merely a list of prohibitions, a cosmic to-do list dictating acceptable behavior? Or could they be something far more profound, a divinely crafted invitation to the deepest intimacy with the source of all being? Did the Church Fathers, in their relentless pursuit of God, uncover a secret within the Decalogue, a hidden pathway leading not just to moral rectitude, but to mystical union, and for those of us who may feel distant from the divine, burdened by our imperfections? Could these ancient laws actually be the very rungs of a ladder ascending to the heart of God? For the Fathers, these seemingly stark pronouncements were not the final destination, but rather essential steps on a transformative journey. They understood the Decalogue as a purification process, stripping away the layers of ego, attachment, and disordered desire that obscure our vision of the divine. As Teresa of Avila, that great doctor of the Church and mystic, so eloquently wrote, "The soul's center is God." Could it be that the commandments, in their seemingly negative framing, are actually designed to dismantle the barriers that prevent us from reaching that central point of our being, where we find our truest identity and our deepest communion? Think of the Carmelite nun in prayer, her posture one of complete surrender and focused intention. Has she not, through a life of disciplined prayer and adherence to God's will, a will often expressed through these very commandments, arrived at a profound intimacy with the divine? Is her contemplative silence not the fruit of a heart purified by love, a heart that has learned to listen to the still, small voice of God precisely by quieting the clamor of worldly desires that the Decalogue seeks to tame? Could it be that obedience to these laws, far from being a constraint, actually frees the soul to soar to unimaginable heights of mystical encounter? Consider the family gathered for the Sabbath meal. Is not their shared ritual, their intentional setting aside of worldly concerns to be present to one another and to God, a living embodiment of the commandment to keep holy the Sabbath day? In this act of communal devotion, are they not experiencing a foretaste of that ultimate communion to which we are all called, a sacred space where the bonds of love are strengthened and the presence of the divine is palpable? Could it be that the commandments, when embraced with intention and love, actually create these pockets of sacred space within our ordinary lives, inviting us into deeper connection with both the human and the divine, and the simple act of hands breaking bread? Is this not the very essence of communion, the sharing of life, the breaking down of barriers? Does not the Eucharist itself, the ultimate act of communion for Christians, embody the very principles enshrined in the Decalogue? Love for God expressed through love for neighbor, a rejection of idolatry in favor of the one true God, a commitment to truth and justice in our relationships. Could it be that the commandments, in their essence, are a call to break down the walls that separate us from God and from one another, inviting us to partake in the shared life of the divine? The fathers, with their profound spiritual insight, saw the Decalogue not as a static set of rules, but as a dynamic invitation, a love letter penned by the divine, beckoning us to ascend the mountain of the Lord. Psalm 24:3, and dwell in sacred communion. But what does it truly mean to ascend this mountain? Is it not a journey of inner transformation, a gradual stripping away of all that is not essential, all that hinders our union with God? All that hinders our union with God. And are not the commandments the very guideposts along this arduous, yet ultimately rewarding ascent, marking the path towards purity of heart, singleness of intention, and a love that embraces both God and neighbor without reservation? Could it be that our modern tendency to view the commandments as mere moral obligations has blinded us to their deeper spiritual purpose? Have we reduced a divine invitation to a set of regulations, missing the transformative power they hold to lead us into profound encounter with the living God? With the living God? With the living God? The mystical summit awaits, a place of intimate communion and boundless love. The Decalogue, far from being an obstacle, is the very ladder that can lead us there, if only we have the courage to climb, the faith to trust, and the love to embrace its transformative power. Are we ready to accept this divine invitation, to embark on this ascent towards the heart of God, the eternal echo? Have we truly grasped the shocking simplicity and the radical demand embedded within these ancient words? Could it be that what we've often perceived as a restrictive code is, in reality, the very blueprint for human flourishing? A pathway to a joy and fulfillment we scarcely dare to imagine? From Augustine's restless heart, forever yearning for divine embrace, to Aquinas's meticulously ordered vision of a universe governed by reason and love, the wisdom of the Fathers converges on a single transformative truth. The Decalogue is not a burden to be grudgingly borne, but a beacon, illuminating the path towards authentic humanity and profound communion. But are we brave enough to truly follow its light? Consider Augustine's lifelong struggle, his tumultuous journey from earthly desires to a love that found its ultimate rest in God. Did he not discover that true freedom wasn't found in breaking the rules, but in allowing his heart to be reordered by a love that naturally aligned with the divine will? Could it be that our own restless hearts, constantly seeking satisfaction in fleeting pleasures, are actually longing for the very thing the Decalogue points us towards? A love so deep and abiding that it transcends the superficial allure of the world, or that transcends the superficial allure of the world? And Aquinas, with his unwavering belief in the harmony between faith and reason, revealed the inherent logic and natural justice embedded within these commands. But in a world that often seems to prize self-interest above all else, where the pursuit of power and wealth can eclipse the common good, are we truly living in accordance with this rational order? Could it be that the chaos and injustice we witness around us are not a testament to the irrelevance of the Decalogue, but rather a stark consequence of our collective failure to heed its timeless wisdom? Fathers, in their diverse contexts and through their unique perspectives, converge on this essential truth. The Decalogue calls us to love fiercely, not with a sentimental or self-serving affection, but with a radical self-giving affection, but with a radical self-giving love that mirrors the very love of God. It calls us to live justly, not merely by adhering to the letter of the law, but by cultivating a deep and unwavering commitment to fairness, equity, and the inherent dignity of every human being. And it calls us to walk humbly, recognizing our dependence on God and our interconnectedness with one another, rejecting the arrogance and self-sufficiency that so often lead to division and strife. But are we truly willing to embrace this radical call? Look at the child placing stones upon the cairn, each stone a tangible reminder of a divine command. Is this not a symbol of a life built, stone by careful stone, upon the enduring foundation of God's law? And as that cairn transforms into a glowing path leading towards a radiant horizon, are we not witnessing the transformative potential of a life lived in accordance with these principles? Could it be that the justice that flows like rivers in the desert, prophesied by Jeremiah, is not a distant utopian dream, but the inevitable consequence of hearts transformed by love and lives lived in obedience to God's eternal law? The journey began at Sinai, a singular moment of divine revelation. But the Fathers remind us that this journey does not end there. It continues in us, in our daily choices, in our interactions with one another, in our striving to embody the love, justice, and humility that the Decalogue calls us to. The final text overlay from Jeremiah offers a profound promise. I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. Could it be that the ultimate fulfillment of the Decalogue lies not in external obedience, but in an internal transformation so complete that God's law becomes the very rhythm of our hearts, the guiding principle of our minds, the very essence of who we are? The eternal echo of Sinai resonates still. Will we allow it to shape not just our actions, but the very core of our being, drawing us into that ultimate communion with God and with one another for which we were created? Call to action. Thank you for accompanying us on this profound exploration of the collective wisdom of the Church Fathers and the enduring power of the eternal Decalogue. If this journey into the depths of God's timeless law and its transformative impact across millennia has resonated within your spirit, we invite you to become a vital part of the Hope in God community. Subscribe to deepen your understanding through more theological reflections. Share your own moments of encountering divine guidance within these ancient truths, and let us continue this shared pilgrimage together, discovering hope and meaning in every echo of Sinai that resonates in our hearts. What enduring truth from the Decalogue, illuminated by the Fathers, speaks most powerfully to your life today? Share your reflections in the comments below, and let's learn from one another.